Hi, my name is Terry Beckman, and I am the founder of Skillful Means Consulting and Training. I help individuals, teams, and organizations develop structures for business success. This is video number 4 of our Powering Your Results series, and today we're going to focus on positive communication for business results and success. So welcome. First, I want to acknowledge all the work that you've been doing over the last few weeks, and in particular the last 2 weeks, focusing on your time practices, so developing good structures in time, becoming more aware of how you actually are spending your time. And I look forward to continuing that discussion when we talk again this week, and we'll refine those practices further. Today, we're going to begin to talk about how do we create successful relationships and communication patterns with others. So people that can help us be able to manifest our vision, whether they're vendors, customers, partners, all of the people that we are in contact with as we build our business. I want to review briefly with you our objectives for today. So where are we going? The first thing that we're going to do is recognize and become familiar with the components of positive communication. So there are specific components that are included in positive communication that will help improve your communication effectively. So we'll get real clear about those. And I'm sure that you will recognize that in your own patterns. They're not things that are unfamiliar. Second is to become aware of your own habitual communication patterns. So some of those may work really well for you and some may not work so well. So especially habitual patterns, it's really important for us to become familiar with those so that we can have more choice and be able to respond in a way that will get the best results for us depending on the situation. So we want to become familiar with this. And then third is to begin to practice positive patterns for successful communication. So to actually practice it. And you'll have an opportunity to take it, see where the rubber meets the road, take it into your life and see what kind of results you actually get using some of these methods. So this is what we're going to work on today. Positive communication begins with inner communication. And inner communication is really how do we talk to ourselves, is really where we begin. And we're going to start with a really wonderful practice that will help us to, one, start to actively communicate with ourselves and create a strong foundation for inner communication. So if you would, I'm going to ask you to pause the video in a moment, get your chair or your cushion ready, and we're going to do a little practice together. So I'll be right back. Thank you. Okay, so now you've got your seat, either your cushion on the floor or your chair. And if you're on a chair, I'm on a stool, you want to be on the edge of the stool or the chair with your feet on the floor. So feel your feet on the floor. If you're sitting on a cushion, feel your sits bones through the cushion. And basically you have a triangular firm base through your sits bones and your feet, whether on the floor or in the chair. And your arms are relaxed. Your hands are on your thighs or your knees. Your back is straight but not rigid. So as I go through these postures, you can just make some small adjustments. Your chin is tucked in just a little bit to align your neck with your spine. Your jaw is relaxed. So to do that, we open the mouth just a little bit. And the tongue is on the upper palate, the soft part of the top of your mouth, just behind your teeth. So tip of the tongue, and then if you can, breathe through nose and mouth. The idea there is to bring nourishment to both the mind and the body. And the eyes are softly open looking down, not looking at anything in particular. See if you can actively relax little muscles around your eyes. So this is just a great foundational posture. And let's begin to, for a moment, just bring the chin down to the chest. And then bring the chin up, opening up the throat. And we're just going to loosen up this area, the shoulders and the neck. So doing this movement a couple of times. And then right ear to the right shoulder, opening up the left side. Left ear to left shoulder, opening up the right side. So you may feel some significant tightness. It really helps to breathe through that. When you're ready, let's start to rotate your head to the right. If you've had any neck problems, you're going to do a very small circle. But if you have just kind of the normal crunchy neck, see if you can make a big circle with the top of your head. And slowing down through tight spots. Slowing down and breathing into that tightness. So just take your time with this. Allow your shoulders to relax as you do your rotations. You may find spots that are relatively smooth, and then you run into places where tightness and tension is being held. So breathing into those spots, having your awareness and your breath right in the tightness is a way that we can start to loosen that unnecessary holding. So 3 rotations to the right. And then let's reverse the direction when you're ready to the left. So just noticing the tightness, noticing how it's different, rotating to the left. Continuing to breathe through nose and mouth, so we don't want to hold the breath. So being patient with our tight spots. Wanting to become more familiar with the holding patterns and just more familiar. As we move into that tightness, it changes. So one last rotation to the left, counterclockwise. And once you've completed that, you can bring your head back to an upright position with your chin again tucked in just a little bit. We're going to move into a practice from Mastering Successful Work called Silence, Clarity, and Ease. It's said this exercise is especially helpful when we feel confused or a little bit dull. It rejuvenates awareness, concentration, and energy, sharpens focus, concentration, and stabilizes our efforts. So this really fits right into that map of human being. So going back in to our breathing through nose and mouth, tip of the tongue on the upper palate. Feel a breath moving in and out of your body. And you become aware of that soft feeling of warmth in your neck, your shoulders, your throat, especially stimulated from that exercise we just did. And appreciate and enjoy this warmth, merging it with the awareness that follows it. Let it become richer and deeper. Really focusing on those sensations. Gradually let the warmth spread down to your shoulders, all the way to your heart, and up to your head. So you can do that by breathing into the sensations. And from there, move the energy or the sensations through your whole body, deep into the tissues, the muscles, the organs, even into your cells. So take a moment, see if you can move that energy through the whole body, using your breath and your awareness. That same gentle warmth can pass into the space immediately surrounding your body as well. Imagine the space itself becomes warm, soft, gentle, calm, and quiet. The quality of this space is soothing and happy, relaxing the body deep within. Touching this quiet silence with awareness, you may sense a soft warmth expanding several inches beyond the skin. See if you can sensitively explore the warmth, playing with its edges. It may expand more and more until it is double the size of the body. So, using your breath, gently expanding that feeling beyond your body. How far does it expand? Gently, the senses can appreciate these feelings, merging inside and outside into a quiet, silent space. The fuller the silence, the deeper the relaxation. The body becomes more settled, space opens up, allowing energy to flow freely, both inside and outside the body. Throat, head, belly, and heart are loose. The silence is like a sleeping baby. And when you're ready, start to bring your awareness back into the room. See if you can bring this sense of the inner and outer mixing, communicating. Bring that with you for the rest of your day today. Welcome back. So I hope that exercise was helpful for you. We're going to begin now to look at what I like to call a map of human being. And this is something that I'll also send to you so that you'll have your own copy of it. But I'd still suggest that you take notes as we work through this today, because you may have insights, and it just helps to kind of bring it into your body if you're also writing it down. It's a great way to learn. So the map of the human being really starts with our components of being, which is our mind, our breath, and our body. And we've been talking a fair amount about this. And of course, speech is also tied in closely with breath. So we always begin here, just like in the meditation that we just did. We're very interested in how to, as a foundational piece, how do we stabilize the body, the breath, and the mind? How do we stabilize them and start to integrate them so that they're functioning well, right? Remember from early on in the first video when we talked about stress. So stress happens when the mind and the body are not operating together well, independently, or together, not operating well. So we want these things to operate well, and that creates a strong foundation for us to be able to do anything in our business. The second middle column is we call inner resources, and that includes our awareness, which is closely linked to our intelligence, our concentration, and our energy. And these things are also linked to a corresponding part of our being. So it makes sense the mind and awareness are linked. Interestingly, the breath and concentration are also linked, and the body and energy. So of course our energy is in our body. And the same kind of thing, as our practice develops, these start to integrate. And the other thing that's interesting about this is that this middle row essentially connects the top and the bottom. So to be able to integrate the mind and the body, the breath is the vehicle to do that. To be able to integrate our awareness and our energy, we do that through concentration. So concentration is a really important skill that we want to become familiar with so that we can integrate these things. Essentially, having the awareness of what we desire to do and combining that with our energy requires concentration to be able to get a specific result, so that it's not just random energy moving all over the place and we're thinking we want to do one thing but we're doing another. So concentration is the thing that really integrates those. And then the third column starts to get very interesting. So these are kind of the qualities that we can bring forward as a human being. And the top is, I've put several things here. You could put responsibility here. So, but I've kind of added to that and massaged it a little bit. So it includes our creative abilities. It includes being able to creatively bring things into the world. Our ability to respond, which sometimes is easier for people than saying responsibility. So our ability to respond appropriately to opportunities, to situations that present themselves. And what that really ultimately is talking about is our inner freedom, our ability to choose, our ability to choose with awareness. So this is really a high-level functioning of the mind. The middle quadrant here is communication. So we've got creativity, ability to respond. Communication is in the middle, and the bottom corner here is engaged action, or if we're really working in a team, cooperation. Again, communication is the thing that links these things. So our engaged action and our creativity is linked by our communication. Again, these tend to be a little more externally focused. So when we're starting to work with other people, communication is how we make the link between really our vision and engaging people into our vision, getting them to help us, and agreement in moving forward in a way that's appropriate. So you can also look at this graph kind of this way. And today we're going to be focusing largely on communication, which is associated with the breath and speech, as well as concentration. So these things really support each other. As we start to get better at any of these things across here, you can really choose to begin anywhere in a sense. The other things come into balance. So they don't exist in a vacuum. As we improve our communication, generally that's a prerequisite for engaged action and cooperation. We're really laying the foundation for that to happen. Communication also, good communication can help us to become clearer about our vision and our creative abilities, can feed that in a way. As this becomes clearer, we can communicate it more clearly. You know, as we learn to work with people better, our communication improves. So you can see as you start to work with one, the other two, as you start to improve one, the other two very naturally come into balance. So we'll continue to be kind of working around this map for the rest of our time together. So it's a nice resource to have and just gives you a context for the work that we're doing. So I want to move a little bit more directly into communication and ask you to think a little bit about how is it that you communicate with others? How is it that you communicate with other people? And you can start writing down, how do you communicate? This is a great exercise. And usually in classes, I am writing it down and people are shouting out how this works. So I'll give you some answers that have come from other people. One is speech. That's a really obvious one that often we think this is our main way of communicating. Where we're going to find those, there's actually many others. A second way that we communicate is through body language, right? If you think about that, body language says just volumes often. A third way may be through writing, or in our day and age, emailing, texting. Emailing and texting are particularly challenging because we don't have either speech or visual cues to tell us what's really going on. So these are things to be careful with in communication. Another way we communicate, if you think about it, is through silence, right? If you're choosing to be silent in a situation, that communicates in and of itself. Another way is through movement, right? Certainly dance communicates, but just even in how we move with other people, if someone said move out, leave the room, that's a communication, or to walk into the room is a communication. Omissions is another way that we communicate. So if we actually choose to leave something out, that also communicates, doesn't it? And the last on this list is the breath. So if you think about it, if someone walks into a room and they're breathing, sort of short, quick breaths, that communicates a lot, right? Anxiety or some kind of discomfort. And we also communicate to ourselves a lot through the breath. So if your breath is soft and even and long, that's a way that we communicate with ourselves, right? I mean, we found, again, in Transforming Stress, that's a way to communicate balance to ourselves and kind of bring us back into a balance if we're starting to feel anxiety. So we communicate in many different ways and through different parts of our being. So this is also something to be aware of, is the how, kind of how does this happen? So the speech really is connected to the breath, right? That's really like the vehicle for speech is the breath. And body language is through the body. we're thinking about body, breath, and mind. So writing, email, or text, you can think, what would that be? Really, that's the mind, right? We're thinking and then we write it down. Silence is also typically a mental kind of communication. Movement would be the body. Omissions. What do you think? Omissions would be the mind. And the breath. So the breath is the breath. So we're really, again, just to demonstrate, we're using our body, breath, and mind to communicate. We use all three, and we use them pretty much constantly. So it's not like there's really a break in it, right? These things are, most of the time, they're in play in one way or another. So helpful to be aware of that we are communicating in many different ways, even if we're not aware of it. So if we don't think we are communicating, we really are. We really are, both to ourselves and to other people. So I want to take just a moment now to talk about patterns and habits of communication. These are typical patterns and habits. I'm just going to grab a marker here. So pushing is a common pattern of communication in people. If you know, this is a sense, and it's an internal sense of pushing. So you're kind of in a conversation, and you know you're pushing for something. You know, you sort of, and I'm sure you felt that coming from other people. You know, there's an agenda there, and they're pushing it. Pushing. Whatever the other person is saying, there's sort of this kind of action, that kind of energy going on in the communication. Another very typical pattern is holding back. So something comes up within us and we don't share it. So it comes up in response to something in the environment, and we don't know how to share it without anxiety or anger. But there is something there that's happening that would most likely be very helpful to be communicated. It doesn't have to be anxiety or anger. It can just be something going on, you know, relative to the situation, and we hold back. We don't, you know, we're shy, or, you know, whatever our kind of internal story is about that, but we hold back. The last one is ignoring, and this is a little trickier because it's less active in a way, because it is so habitual, and we're sort of so focused on a somewhat narrow perspective most of the time, that we don't even realize that we are ignoring parts of the situation that would be really helpful in terms of having more knowledge. So pushing, holding back, ignoring. We want to start to become real familiar with our own patterns in this. We may find that we do all three. If this is going on, there's a few things you can be sure of. One is that we're out of time. So meaning that we're not present. We're not present in the moment, really being able to see what's actually happening. And why is that? That's because we're pushing an agenda, right? Or we're holding back, so there's something coming up in us, and then we're saying, no, hold it down. And there's a story about why we're holding it down. So we get lost in that story, the story of I want this, or the story of no, I have to push this down. And we're missing what's actually happening. Of course, ignoring, you're going to be completely missing what's happening, whatever you're ignoring. So we're kind of lost in stories of the past, or worried about the future, typically. And like I said, we miss what's happening. Very characteristic of these things is kind of me. Like, I am at the center of all of this. And there can be qualities of defensiveness as well as self-protection. So if you start to feel these things, self-protection or defensiveness, it's another clue that you're in this cycle, right? You're in this cycle, you're essentially out of time, you are missing what's actually happening, and the effective communication is not going to happen. So it is a missed opportunity. It is not going to happen. So we, again, want to become real familiar with this. Let me just check my notes. So we're going to do a little practice now so that we can become familiar with this in ourselves. So I'd like to, again, ask you to take a moment to get your chair or cushion set up, and I'll be right back. Thanks. Okay, so you're set with your chair or your cushion. And this practice is in particular designed to help us become more familiar with our patterns of communication. So no need to judge. You know, we're just going to watch. We just want to become familiar with our habits. That's the purpose, is just to become familiar. So before we start, I want to ask you to pick a situation from the last week or so, you know, fairly recent, where you had a difficult communication with someone. Either it was irritating, you know, or it just made you a little angry. If you had a major issue this week, don't pick that. So we don't want to start, you know, building this muscle by lifting the heaviest weight, because it just doesn't work very well that way. So we want to start with something kind of small to medium irritation. So take a moment and just, you know, pick one. Just pick one so you have it in your mind, so you don't have to be searching as we start to practice. So if you don't know what it is, just pause the video for a moment and pick one for yourself. So once you have it, we'll start our practice. So we're not going to start though thinking about it right away. I want you to come into your sitting posture. So if you're on the floor, feel your sits bones and your knees on the floor, feel your foundation. If you're in a chair, feel your feet flat on the floor, your sits bones through the chair sitting on the edge. Feel your connection to the ground, however you're sitting. So you're likely on a floor, but that floor is connected to a foundation that's actually in the earth. So feel your connection to the earth and how that supports you. Back is straight but not rigid. Our arms are loose, hands are on our knees. Back is straight, again, not rigid, and the head is tilted forward just slightly so that our neck is aligned with our spine. Our mouth is open to relax the jaw, and the tongue is on the upper palate. Tip of the tongue just behind the teeth. Breathing through nose and mouth. Eyes are soft. And in this case, let's close our eyes. Connect to your breath. So just noticing, where is your breath in your body today, in this moment? See if you can make it just a little bit deeper. Exhale a little bit longer. Allow it to be soft. And we're going to start to bring to mind now the situation that was irritating for us this last week. I want you to call it to mind and it's like you're going back through a movie. So you're kind of letting the camera roll and you're just watching. So watching the beginning of the interaction that you had with this person or persons likely. And see yourself beginning to get a little bit irritated. So just again, just watching like a movie. Carefully watch the other people that are involved. So noticing what they're doing, what they're saying. Watch your reaction to what they're saying. So kind of step by step, how did this thing build? And you want to actually allow yourself to feel the irritation again. So go back in and feel the feelings, feel the anger if that was there, or the anxiety, whatever your feelings were. And notice where you're feeling it in your body, if it's in your shoulders are tightening, or your throat, your chest, your belly. Maybe you're getting a headache. So you just want to notice where the tightening is happening and allow yourself to fully be in it again. So just noticing where is the irritation in the body, feel it again, and let the situation roll. See the whole thing unwinding. Just for a moment, really be in it. Really be in it. So as I ring the bell, drop the story, just let it go. Take a nice deep breath. Connect to your body again. So see if you can make that shift. So we're going to go back into the story. And we're going to pay a little more attention to what's happening to the parts of our being that are involved. So take a nice deep breath again, staying connected to your breath. And let's go back into the story. So go back to the beginning. And first notice your body. So notice your body with a little more care. What was happening to your body as you went through this situation? So exactly, see if you can see where the contraction started, at what point in the conversation, and how did it manifest in your body? So did you feel it in your shoulders, your belly, again, your chest? Take a breath now and see yourself in the story and relax your body. So whatever those feelings are, moving your awareness into the feelings and relax your body. Relax all the tight places you experience in this difficult communication. Next, notice your breath. So what's your breath doing as you communicate? Is it shortening? Are you forgetting to breathe completely? Holding your breath? So go back and imagine taking a deep breath. Like pausing in the communication and taking a deep breath. What is that like? So continuing to be in contact with that deeper, maybe smoother breath. Now notice your mind. Were you pushing or holding back in the communication? What pattern was active? Were you pushing or holding back? And imagine you can find a way to let go of that. either the pushing or the holding back. So if you're pushing, relax that. If you're holding back, imagine you find a way to communicate what it is you need to say in this moment. Clearly, with compassion, just stating what actually is happening for you. Notice what maybe you were ignoring in the situation. So were there other people around, other things happening, maybe relevant or not, but just notice what were you ignoring in the situation. Let that come into view. Notice what is real and what is actually important, and see if you can relax your interpretation of what's happening, your story behind what's happening, your fear of the future or your concern with the past related to this. Let that relax and actually see what was happening in the moment. Continuing to be connected to your breath, relaxed body, relaxed breath, relaxed mind. How would that impact your situation? So again, you can drop the story, let it go. Come back to your breath. Come back to the present moment, your body right now. And if you have any residual feelings, use your breath to let them move through your body, integrate. Just move your breath right into any physical sensations, letting go of the mental story. Let your breath move into the physical sensations. So you can let it go. Now take a moment and write down any insights you had from doing that exercise. Write down what patterns of communication you noticed. And if there were specific stories related to the past or the future that you kind of inserted into a situation where maybe they didn't really belong. So just take a moment to write that down, and we'll have a chance to touch on it in our next phone call. I hope you enjoyed that practice, and we'll have a little bit of time to talk about that in our call this week in terms of any insights that you might have had. So we're going to move on to becoming a little more familiar again with patterns in communication, so continuing this theme. So my question to you is, what happens when there's too much communication? So I'm sure you've been in situations where you've felt that, right? Maybe in a job or in a partnership of some kind where too much communication. So what happens? And again, if you'd start to take some notes for me, I'd really appreciate that, because it's a great way for you to learn and brainstorm with me. So I can't hear you from the other side of the camera, but I want you to write down and brainstorm. Think of things that I don't come up with that are true for you. So one potential outcome of too much communication is that people shut down and they get overwhelmed. So shut down, get overwhelmed. Another potential outcome is people stop listening. So of course, if people stop listening, no communication is happening. Another potential outcome of too much communication is confusion. So you can't absorb it all, and so you don't know if you're picking up what's important or what's not important. You can't absorb it all, and it so creates confusion. You can't, because you can't follow. So another outcome is want to leave. The last group I work with, someone said, yeah, you just want to leave the room when there's too much communication. So again, essentially, there's a good chance there's no communication is really going to happen when there's too much. So we want to be aware of that, right? If we have a tendency to give too much, we want to be aware of that. Even if it's really good stuff, really we feel like it's really important, if we're fire hosing people with it, we're not communicating. You might as well not have said anything. So it's something to be aware of. Too little communication. So what happens when we're holding back and we're not communicating enough? People are not getting enough communication, too little. So we assume things. If we're not getting enough communication, we will assume things. And, where there's assumptions, you can assume the wrong thing. So that can also lead to conflict, right? It's very frustrating not to have enough communication. Can create loneliness and isolation. So when you're working in a group or developing a team or any kind of a partnership, not enough communication can be very isolating for people, unnecessarily isolating, which obviously can help, can have an effect on morale and people's energy levels. People lose interest. So this is also really important for us bringing big visions into the world. So if we're not communicating enough with the people that are important to our business, either our customers, our vendors, gatekeepers, anybody really involved in our business, if there's not enough communication, they're going to lose interest. So we don't want to be lazy about our communication that way. Mistakes. So if there's not enough communication, again, people have to assume things because they don't have enough and much more likely to make mistakes. Lost opportunities. So that makes sense, right? We will have lost opportunities if we don't communicate enough. And essentially, again, there's little or no communication. So that's our risk, right? Is that we don't really communicate what's needed. So just things to consider as we learn how to balance our communication. So we're providing the right information, the right amount, at the right time. So now we're going to talk about the foundation of positive communication. So we've talked a fair amount about habitual patterns in communication that don't work so well. So what works well? What's something that we can start to focus on that will help us? And the first thing I'd like to talk about, there's two parts. So the first part is, I like to call it our triangle, our foundational triangle for communication. So if you remember earlier, we talked about the foundational triangle for our being, right? Which is our mind, our body, and our breath. So this is a corresponding triangle. And it really has to do with being able to ask open questions. Open questions, and particularly helpful questions are what, how, and when. So if we have something we want to ask somebody, if we're initiating a conversation, we want to focus on the what, the how, and the when. This really helps us get to what's essential. right? What's the essential part of our communication? And it very much leads to engaged action, right? It allows people to see clearly what you're talking about, how you want to do it, and when, and so they can decide how they want to engage. We want to focus on facts, and it's not in a dry way, like, you know, I'm only focusing on the facts. It's focusing on the facts with a lot of care. So we bring our care and our compassion into this, but what we want to leave at the door, so to speak, is our opinions, our emotions, our stories about the past, our fears about the future, really our stories. All of that stuff essentially clouds and confuses communication. It really does. We want to really get clear about what it is that we want to communicate and care that the other person is going to be able to receive it. The only way they can receive it is really if it's clear. So take time to really think about this and communicate in a timely and inspiring way. So again, last video we talked about time, right? And the structure of time, the beginning, the middle, and end. Everything has a beginning, middle, and end. Communication is very tied to that. So if we bring communication at the wrong time, if we give people information at the wrong time, it's not helpful. It's not helpful, and it creates difficulties for us and for them. So we want to be aware of that, right? In any process, we want to get people the information they need in time so they can act. So that's another really important consideration. So this is our foundation, our foundational triangle. The what, the when, and the how. The second part of our foundation for positive communication is active listening. So I want to ask you, typically when someone starts talking to you, you're in a conversation, what are you thinking about? What's actually going on in your mind? And what most people say is they're thinking about what they're going to say next. So, this is such a strong habit in us. And it's really nice if we can relax it. So one thing is, it's relaxing not to do that, not to be constantly trying to manipulate and think about how we're going to position ourselves. We don't have to do that. We really don't. Actually, listen. An alternative is to actually listen to what they're saying. So this requires us to be present and open. It doesn't mean we have to swallow everything they're saying, no. But to be present and open and really listen. So there's many benefits to this. One is we start to come into our body and we can start to sense what's actually going on, regardless of what's coming out of their mouth. So to sense, sense if there's unnecessary tension, if there's anxiety, where are they really coming from this? So if we're busy thinking about what we're going to say next and how we're going to defend our position, we will not have access to that information, to that bigger picture of what actually is going on and how we might be able to work with the situation to make things better. So it's really important to learn how to listen, to be able to, we call, actively listen to someone. Certainly, we want to interrupt less if we're in the habit of interrupting people. Sometimes interrupting is required if someone is going on and it's not leading in a productive direction. Finding a way to gently interrupt can be very useful. I'm not saying never interrupt, but if we're in a pattern or a habit where we're constantly interrupting people to kind of get our point over, it's a very short-term strategy that doesn't usually help. We want to be more clear and more caring. So that's part of listening also, and less self-protective. So these things apply whether we're listening or whether we're speaking. Really these are ways that we can instantly improve our ability to communicate. So I want to summarize 5 steps that really help create positive communication. So pull your notebook out, keep writing. So the first step, again, we begin with inner communication. So taking a moment to center and balance your inner communication. Connect with your breath, that's a really good way to start. And to take a moment and be clear about your intention in the communication. So this really just takes a moment, right, to center and balance, connect with the breath, and be clear about what your intention is. So the second, I like to call creating a container for the communication. And that, it's like having an agenda, right? Like if you were, and we'll talk a little bit about meetings, like going into a formal meeting. But if you're just one-on-one with someone, you still, in a sense, want to have an agenda. You want to be able to, you want to first have your intention of what the communication is about, but then you want to share that with the person before you just dive into the communication. So one organization I'm working with, they start off by saying, regarding such and such. So regarding the payroll, regarding, this project that we're working on, do you have 10 minutes? Do you have 5 minutes? Do you have a minute that we could talk about it? So it's a quick sentence, but it allows for a transition if somebody's in the middle of something else, if they're, just picked up the phone. It's just a really nice way to create space for your conversation. If they say yes, then you move on. If they don't have time, then it's a really good moment to say, when would you have time to talk about it, and to set a date, set a commitment moving forward when you'll be in touch again about it. If you move forward with the conversation, so now they're giving you your time, right? Their time. So you want to respect that and be clear and direct then in your communication. Again, relax your tendency to add your stories in. It's not necessary. Focusing in again on the what, the how, the when is really helpful. Fourth, you want to listen with care. So you're going to present this, you're going to hear something back. It's a conversation, right? It goes back and forth. So when they're speaking, you want to listen with care, interrupt less, be present, ask open questions. And I didn't write this here, but sense what's happening. Allow yourself to sense what's happening in the situation. In a sense, feel the situation. Because a lot more is communicated that way, actually, than verbally. You'll have a lot more information, and it gives you the ability to respond more appropriately, more positively. And then last is to find mutual agreement for next steps. So you can see that these steps lead very naturally then into mutual agreement, next steps, roles and responsibilities, so to speak, really cooperation, working together. How are you going to work together? It's very naturally leading into the cooperation in that lower right-hand corner of the human being map where we had engaged action. So you quickly are moving in that direction. One last thing that I want to talk to you about is meetings. So I'm also I'm going to send you an email that'll have a little guide for meetings. It's called Must for Meetings. It looks like this. And it's similar to what we've been talking about, but a little bit more specific for meetings. So It's really helpful to share must-for meetings with other people that you're in regular meetings with. Some of the things that are included are setting the agenda ahead of time, setting a clear beginning and ending time, and really committing to starting and ending on time. A lot of it is what you don't want to do. So you don't want to bring your own personal agendas into a meeting. You don't want to be reading during a meeting, other things. You don't want to have unscheduled breaks in a meeting. You want to focus again on the facts, on the what, the how, and the when. But ultimately, really, meetings are about finding solutions, making decisions. Those are the most important things. You want to also bring up difficulties. So meetings it's very good for doing that because you can get help, right, with whatever the difficulty is and be able to move forward. So making decisions, finding solutions. The point of a meeting, of taking people's time to get together, is to be able to move forward. If you're having meetings where you're just reporting things, you don't need to have a meeting. You know, there are other ways to share information. A meeting, really, you want it to be a time that is like turbocharged communication, where you are able to really exchange important information and make decisions, find solutions so that you can move forward on things, so that they're used as a momentum tool, not a reporting tool. Then you know you've had real communication. So look for that in your email box. And I also want to ask you to practice this. So the steps for positive communication, as well as the suggestions for having effective meetings over the next 2 weeks. If you don't have meetings, if you're not meeting with people at that point in your business, I'm sure you're talking to people. So I'd like you to practice these 5, and I would love to hear feedback about that. If we've missed any steps, if you find any more steps that would be helpful, or I really want to hear how it's going for you. And so with that, that is positive communication for business success. Hope you have a really great 2 weeks, and I look forward to speaking with you soon. Thanks.